Okay, section 4 today, stomach. And I will throw this out there. Everybody's stomach is not the same size, and your stomach size can change, which is why, like Thanksgiving time, Christmas time, when you eat that huge meal, and then the next day you wake up and you're hungry, that's because when your stomach enlarges and is fed very well, it thinks it needs to be fed like that all the time. So everybody's stomach is not the same size. When we go to cadavers, we'll look at a normal sized stomach and an obese person's stomach, and the size difference is amazing. So if you keep feeding your stomach at a big rate, it will actually increase the size of your stomach. So the stomach itself is kind of J-shaped, muscular organ, upper left quadrant of your abdomen. It's going to catch food, so it's really kind of the first place, I shouldn't say first place, chemical digestion started in your mouth. But it's going to add more chemical digestion. So it receives food, it mixes it with digestive juices that are going to break it down, and then once it's done in the stomach, it's going to be propelled to the small intestine. Rugae are gastric folds of that mucosa, that inside lining, allow for your stomach to enlarge and come back. So rugae are the folds in your stomach that allow it to expand and then contract back to normal size after a meal. The stomach itself has parts: cardia, fundus, body, pylorus, and pyloric canal. So we'll look at the diagram. I will point those out. And then remember the esophageal sphincter cut off and let into the stomach. The pyloric sphincter is at the bottom of the stomach, and it is basically the part that controls the release from the stomach to the small intestine. So there's a sphincter muscle at the bottom of the esophagus, and there is a sphincter muscle at the bottom of your stomach. So if I'm looking at the picture, I do like this picture. You probably should know this one. So here is the bottom circular part. So this is the esophageal sphincter. So that's where it's going to pinch or squeeze things into your stomach. When you enter the stomach, the cardia, and I remember this cardia, it kind of sits right by the heart. So cardia is the top part, and it's close to your heart area. The fundus then is just this top, like bubble part of the stomach. And then the body is the main middle part of the stomach. Here you can kind of see those folds. And then I'm going to have the pylorus, which is the bottom, more of kind of like the bottom bubble. So fundus top, pylorus bottom, and then you're going to have your pyloric canal where it starts to narrow off, and then here is your pyloric sphincter. So those parts of the stomach you should be aware of and make sure that you know those. And then the duodenum will be the first part of your small intestine. So secretions in your stomach. Gastric glands in the mucosa, inside lining again, open and have little gastric pits in them. Gastric glands generally have 3 types of cells that secrete. First one, mucus. Mucus cells are going to produce mucus, and basically that mucus protects your stomach lining. Because you have acid in your stomach, that acid can eat through your stomach if it's not protected. So the mucus helps protect your stomach. And then, so mucus cells make mucus. Chief cells make pepsin, which is an enzyme that digests protein. And then pepsinogen, which is activated when the hydrochloric acid is secreted. So chief cells basically secrete pepsin, but when they secrete it, it starts out as pepsinogen, and and then when hydrochloric acid mixes with that, it becomes pepsin, and that's going to break down protein. So pepsin protein. And last type, parietal cells, they are responsible for producing the hydrochloric acid in your stomach. Other things that are in your gastric juice would be intrinsic factor, which is important for absorbing vitamin B12. And this can build up in your body, so you want vitamin B12 to be absorbed. So together, all of those things, the mucus, the pepsin, the hydrochloric acid, everything together is called gastric juice. So gastric juice includes everything. This picture you can kind of see. So here's the pit, the gastric pit. Here's the mucus cells. So mucus is going to secrete the mucus. Parietal cells are scattered throughout. They're a little bit more of a dark brown. So parietal cells are the ones that secrete hydrochloric acid. And then your chief cells pretty much sit at the bottom of these pits. And those are the ones that, okay, they're going to secrete pepsinogen. As the pepsinogen comes up, here it's going to meet a chief cell that's secreting hydrochloric acid, and that is going to create pepsin that will help break down your proteins. So here you can kind of see what's made, where it comes from. This just kind of puts everything in the table. And you can look at that whenever you want to. Regulation. We don't need the same amount of gastric juice all the time, or else we would need to eat a lot more often. So gastric secretions are enhanced by parasympathetic impulses again, a release of acetylcholine, and the hormone gastrin. So there's hormones from the parasympathetic impulses that are going to trigger gastric secretions. As more food enters your small intestine, so as it's being pushed into the small intestine, secretion of gastric juice is inhibited. So your body can tell when food is entering the stomach and when it's leaving the stomach and going into the small intestine. Presence of fats, presence of protein are also going to cause the release of cholecytokinin from the intestinal wall, and that also decreases gastric mobility or gastric production. So the biggest thing that affects it is when the food actually leaves your stomach and gets into your small intestine. So here's just kind of a diagram of how this happens. The vagus nerve is basically where that impulse is going to come in. It's going to stimulate your stomach, and gastrin is going to produce more gastric juice when food is in the stomach. Here, when food starts to get to the bottom of the stomach or into the small intestine, then it's going to slow down or inhibit the amount of gastric juice. And absorption, this is very important. Your stomach does not take up much at all. It's going to mix things, it's going to add juices, but it doesn't really take anything out of that food. The stomach absorbs small quantities. And what it does absorb is a little bit of water, a little bit of salt, alcohol. Your stomach does actually take alcohol out of your system, and some fat-soluble drugs. But as far as like your carbohydrates, your proteins, and things like that that your cells need, your small intestine is going to be where that food is actually absorbed. Following a meal, basically your stomach turns food into chyme. And chyme is the last mixture. If you've ever been really sick and you've thrown up a lot, and you get to the point where you're throwing up something that's kind of green and very sour tasting, that would basically be chyme. You don't have whole food left in your stomach. That is the very much mixed up part that is at the end of your stomach. The rate at which the stomach empties depends on basically the fluid content of the chyme and the type of food. Fats can stay in your stomach for 3 to 6 hours. Proteins and carbohydrates pass through a lot quicker. So fats stay in your stomach longer than proteins and carbohydrates. Then, as chyme starts to leave the stomach, it's going to enter the duodenum, which is the beginning of your small intestine. Accessory organs, your pancreas, your liver, your gallbladder, are all going to add their secretions. So basically, this is at the end of the stomach and the beginning of the small intestine. And that's where we will completely stop for today.